the intro music. Yeah! Woohoo!
Welcome back, PvP. Look, I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, but it is now part of a big new mechanic here with PvP arenas, and they're going through several iterations of arenas to try to make it as balanced as possible. We know that to a degree that's an effort in futility, but hopefully in this video, I can go over some basics of what crewing looks like now here in 2024, the end of 2024, with us being in October, but kind of take a look at what your options are. Now, I will say this, and this might be a controversial topic for many of you. There is more balance, and yes, I'm air quoting it. There's more balance now than you realize, but it's still the imbalance. I'll discuss what I mean by that in this video, so just stick around. Hopefully by the end you go, okay, I get what you're saying. Here's how I can apply it to my account. Or you can just be like, hey, I hate PvP and I don't care. And you can run out with Pipe Roach in or Enterprise E, Data Enterprise E, Picard, and Janeway, whatever you want to run out with, and do it that way. So let's get started. Talk about the basics. You can see this one right here, but we'll start you with a basic idea. Keep in mind when I'm talking crewing, I'm only talking crewing. So this is something I've been talking about for a couple of months, as you can see from this post in my Discord. But there is a triangle that you can fight for based on officers. That triangle is pretty simple. You have the Carol Freeman set, which is, Carol, Honor Guard Worf, Lorca. Whether you have it or not, you've heard of it, you've seen it around. So you've got Carol, Honor Guard Worf, and Lorca, kind of a well-known. Well, that gets beaten by Mirror Universe, which is, Mirror Picard, Mirror Data, or even the rares, and then the new Mirror Her that's come out that have made it a little bit stronger. But Mirror beats Carol Freeman, but there's also the ability for Strike Team to beat Mirror. So you kind of have a triangle now where Mirror is at the top, but at the same time, Mirror can be, hit by Strike Team and win, but Strike Team's definitely going to get beat by Carol Freeman. And Carol Freeman, there's a little bit of, when it comes to Mirror and Carol Freeman, both of them have successes depending on outlying factors. So very core, we want to start with crewing at the top. So let's start with that right now, and we'll use my Vorcha as an example. So this is a pretty standard run if you have the officers unlocked. And yes, I realize that not everybody does, but this is a pretty standard run, including my below decks, and I wanted to show that. So my below deck officers, I'm going to cover that here briefly. You can see I've got the new Picard Hugh. You can source him completely free to play if you've unlocked the NX-01, which again, free to play, but depending on where you are on that unlock path, the NX-01 gives you sourcing to Epic Q. Now, you don't have to use him, but he is somebody to consider with his hull repair at the previous round of combat. Then you have Kira Deuce, very nice, harder to source, but nice for reducing critical hit chance. You also have 7 of 9, which is the Isolated Cascade improvement in PvP. So we got damage, creation, etc. And other things I have down below you see in the background not currently being used. Some of those assimilate related officers, also the lower decks. There are a lot of options. You do want to have the lower decks as filled as possible with abilities you can use, but just some examples to keep that in mind. So let's talk about crewing in general. So how do you flip the triangle? Well, here's an example of a standard hit. I'm going to use it as something that you see a lot of. This is kind of what I'm showing you here. Now, slight difference is they're using full synergy for their Mirror Universe, but taking down Carol Freeman, like powered ships, kind of like minded ships, but getting the result that you kind of expect. And here is the other side of that, another Q. I like snapping like I'm Q. It just makes me feel cool. So anyway, now you have Battleship Strike Team taking down Mirror of, again, 2 very similar ships and not really difference in terms of FTs. And I'll cover FTs towards the end of this video. As you can see, you can have some success between that crew and this one, which might shock some players. And the reason I wanted to have this conversation and bring y'all to the table here for this video is to kind of talk about this part, because I know a lot of our lower levels and free-to-play don't tend to have the latest PvP meta, which is that over there, right? And if you do have any of these, feel free to comment down below. But the main issue is I'm just trying to make sure that everybody has the best opportunity that they can put forward to win a PvP match, whether it's in arena, in your regular play, in your server, or whatever. So you're seeing some examples of how this works, right? Like we have seen plenty of times of Strike Team getting beat by Carol Freeman. So what is the general idea consensus on crews? So if you're running 4 arenas, biggest thing I can say is simply load out as many PvP variants as you have across your docks. So you see that I have this old school, really old school. What if you're a lower level player here, not doing arenas, but looking at PvP? This is an old school loadout with Perk for my Enterprise, giving me morale, giving me that hidden bonus there with the stat boosting and stuff. Charvenik, which is a piercing officer, and then Honor Guard War for critical. Now, there are a lot of ways that we can move this around and change this as an early PvP crew. For example, we can easily just throw on this right here. If we want to go mitigation focus versus piercing focus, still keep our shields up with morale, have the critical going with Honor Guard Wharf. So this is a lower level type of crew, and depending on what level we're debating, we can even start throwing in some of the classic rares like this. This is one of the oldest PvP crews known to Star Trek Fleet Command, and that you'll see players in the 20s using. So it just depends on where you're at. Obviously, epics are big, and I know epics can be tough to get. We'll go over sourcing again in a little bit, but I'm going to back out of this one and talk about more crewing. So we've got this on the Enterprise. Here is my Tribune running a Battleship Strike Team. Then we've got my Corvus running Explorer Strike Team. There's that big one we talked about right there. And then Speed Crew, really important. Not necessarily PvP specific, but important. And then last but not least, my Interceptor Strike Team. Now, I've even gone as far as to do what I did not think I would do. I took the time to readjust my presets so that I could include these here. So you see, I got PvP Generic 1, Generic 2, and that's what I kind of want a lot of y'all to see. If you're above level 40, you have access to a lot of these officers. So now you're starting to look at things like this. My Generic 1. Well, this is generically, generically the strongest. Then you have this down below, which is incredibly powerful depending on what you're fighting. And then you have your strike teams available, then speed, and then I get into my other crews down there. So as you're going through it, it's just kind of really about memorizing what that triangle is at the start. And keep in mind that I'm not trying to say that this is an end-all be-all to winning, because there's so many other things that apply. And now we're going to take that time to talk about other things that apply. Not just below decks, which we see here. Again, more examples of some below deck officers, weapons, damage bonus, shield bonus, a crit bonus, etc. But let's also talk about FTs. So number one, let me get this out the way. If you're watching this video and you're going, hey, what's the best FT in the game? That is Tantalus Field. It is overpowered. Put it this way, no matter what crew I show you, if somebody hits you with a max Tantalus Field, they're probably going to win. This is why it's important to know your secondary abilities on things like your Mantis and your NSEA. Specialty ships that can provide supporting roles to help you in PvP can be very instrumental. But if you're just talking about straight up, I don't care if you have Strike Team and they have Mirror. If they've got Mirror and Tantalus Field, you're going to be at a disadvantage. So then you have to add in FTs of how do we overcome these types of difficult, alignments when it comes to PvP bracketing. And I don't have the perfect answers, and I'm not trying to say that I do. I cannot give every single one of you a perfect PvP experience, but I can help you be equipped to be the best you could possibly be. At the end of the day, that's all you can really do. Be the best player that you can be. So Tantalus Field is the strongest one in the game, and then if you've gotten the Ferengi Whip, you might have been able to unlock something like the Time Crystal, which you see I have on my Borchai at tier 8. Give me a boost, but a lot of these epic PvP FTs are not available to the masses. But what is available is officers, and that's what you want to try to source. Now, if you're a high-level player going, how can I be better? Running something like this with a high Tantalus Field is your meta for being dominant in PvP, and then adding in things like your high bore cube and cutting beam powers and stuff. But let's talk about officer sourcing. Hop into our faction menu real quick. We're going to go to section 31, which obviously is stuff that y'all can start working on before the 40s. So you can come down here and find some crewing. There are some of your strike team options. If you make it to Spy Master, you can pull Carol Freeman here, but these now have renewed value. There was a time where these didn't have that much, but now that we're talking about actually being able to use them in the game, you can go to here for sourcing for specifically strike teams and Carol Freeman. X-Borg has, some favors, but not super exciting. Terran, though, just came out, has the newest set that you can grind for, again, if you're 40 plus participating in PvP arenas. So there are 2 free-to-play paths to the main section of the game's PvP officers, now readily available, as well as if you've leveled up. So this doesn't apply if you're like level 25, but the Ultra Chest is now including the new PvP officers as they've added more in. Now, I know this is completely full. This is not as good of a sourcing mechanic as other ways, but between PvP that you can source in incursions event stores, now 2 faction stores, ultra tokens, and then last but certainly not least, your amalgam refinery allowing you to source Honor Guard Wharf, which I saved this one for this video because finally finally, I can tear up Honor Guard 4. These are the way to source those officers to become competitive in PvP. And last, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not trying to blow smoke on anybody and tell y'all that y'all are going to be amazing if you just load this out. I can't guarantee these outcomes, but I can tell you the basics of why things happen and how they do. Apex Barrier is made to make fights longer. The only reason that this crew loses to Carol Freeman is Carol Freeman makes fights end immediately. Hence why the counter to Carol Freeman and her crew was Apex Barrier, which made fights longer again. Well, a longer fight actually works to the advantage of Strike Team. That's the basic premise of why they work against Mirror. Also, if you got PvP FTs or even Great Below Decks, it doesn't matter because the crew can be overcome. But the basics of the modern crew is these are now being made available to you in multiple ways, and here's how you can take advantage of them. And there is a rough PvP triangle, meaning there is a little bit of balance compared to, for the past 3 years, it was mostly you either have this crew or you lose. You have this crew or you lose. Now you have been given, hopefully, a little bit, just a pequeño amount of options so that you can try to have success, whether you're using the full-on meta to beat the old meta, or whether you're trying to flip the triangle in the picture you just saw, or flip the PvP triangle, as it were. Hope this helps out, but if you have more questions, I do want to be very, very open to hearing what you have to say. There's exceptions to all of these rules. It's just baseline information, and hopefully it helps you out. If it did, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Live long and plunder. Stay safe with the Space Cowboys. Deuces, that's me. Catch you on the next Star Trek Fleet Command video. Happy Spooktober, and appreciate every single one of you.
An even better outro than the intro. For the Empire and glory to your house.